banks all over the world, they take your money and they go speculate with it, and they lose a lot of it, and then they rely on bailouts. And when the bailouts stop, then you try to get it out, there's nothing there.
Banks in Lebanon will close next week after a series of heists as armed depositors attempt to withdraw their own money. So you see these people in Lebanon have had their funds, their wealth, their money, they thought was money, but it's obviously not money if it could be seized like that and frozen and kept by somebody else.
Yeah, like we say, only keep money in the bank that you're willing to lose. A lot of people don't understand legally that when you put money or cash or currency into the bank, it becomes the property of the bank. And this is demonstrated in Lebanon in no uncertain terms. People don't have access to their own money because the banks in Lebanon, I'm sure, like banks all over the world, they take your money and they go speculate with it, and they lose a lot of it, and then they rely on bailouts. And when the bailouts stop, then you try to get it out, there's nothing there. So this is really a continuation, Stacey. I was thinking about this. This all started, back with Occupy Wall Street, if you recall. The movement of activism pointed at the banks, and we need to do something about the banks. Nothing was done. We keep going through these crises where the banks are acting poorly, acting badly, acting against the interests of the population. And now we're at the point where you see in Lebanon where people are saying, we're not going to protest anymore. We're going down there armed looking for our money.
Well, it brings up a number of things. First of all, it was hyperinflation, which caused this banking crisis there. So they have their own unique situation and own unique, similar to here, of a sort of post-imperial constitution imposed upon the population, whereby, three sects get to run the whole country, and they can't lose that position. They get a certain share of running, it's proof of stake, right? They have a proof of stake in the system where they get 30% of the economy, they get 30% of the political power, and corruption ensues, right? What we've seen is that corruption has led, in a time of deglobalization and de-dollarization, to hyperinflation. A lot of people thought they were protecting themselves from hyperinflation by holding US dollars instead in their bank account. But of course, the central government doesn't want to lose their US dollars when you withdraw it all. So there's it's a ridiculous amount, like $50 a day or something like that, that they're allowed to even take out of their own bank account. Whether or not they have hundreds of thousands or not, they can only take $50, especially in the United States and the United Kingdom and Europe and Australia and New Zealand. They've really lived quite well, really lived like aristocrats over the past 2 years of getting to stay at home all day and seemingly just free money, all this proof of stake. They are the biggest economies in the world, so they have a bigger stake in this fiat system, and they get more airdrops sent to them at home. And so they feel like this is going to continue. And this woman in Lebanon probably thought like she had built up whatever wealth she had, and that was going to protect her and be hers to use, but she never owned that wealth.
Right. The key phrase there being hyperinflation. So the currency lost 90% of its value recently. This is something we know from Venezuela, the images of paper money littering the streets. And is this trend of hyperinflation going to spread globally? Well, remember Jack Dorsey recently made a big point on Twitter calling that current policies would lead to hyperinflation. And there was a lot of jawboning and chin-wagging amongst the intelligentsia that he was misusing the word hyperinflation, and we might have a little inflation. And of course, now we're seeing a lot of inflation, and we're seeing admission by policymakers that they believe they may have reached a point in the cycle where they simply can't stop the inflation with raising rates. Because this is only debasing the currency by dismantling the economy at a rate faster than they can print. And this is a recipe for hyperinflation. And what we're seeing in Lebanon could start a global contagion.
The hyperinflation, all of the money printing we've seen from the biggest central banks in the world is theft, is confiscation. A lot of people, even if you don't have your money in a bank, Max, because you're saying like if this woman had kept her money at home, she would still have it. But still, it was being stolen every single day. She thought like the dollar was safer. Certainly it is safer than the Lebanese, I think, pound. But it could still be stolen through inflation, through money printing,
Okay.
through the trillions.
There's no escape, except in El Salvador, they did find the escape hatch,
Yes.
as Christine Lagarde called it, and that's Bitcoin, right?
Yes. And so we're going to look at Adam Back's 2 tweets here to demonstrate to you the difference between proof of work and proof of stake. What the difference is between a gold standard, a Bitcoin standard that you have to put energy in, actually, mine the coins, mine the new wealth, that there's no quintillionaire at the top. They can't just print up new wealth randomly and capriciously and decide to bail out those people or rescue those people, let those 200 million people work from home while those other people over there have to work for a hyperinflating currency to provide the goods and services for those people working from home. Adam Back, cryptographer, Bitcoin OG, a lot, he was mentioned in the Bitcoin white paper, let's say that, by Satoshi Nakamoto. And he said about Bitcoin is self-sovereignty, modern free man, a positive message of hope for humanity, economic growth, power abundance paid for by private enterprise via economic incentives, separate money from state. So versus proof of stake, he says, neo-feudal serfs and to digital fiefdoms ruled by pre-mine lords, digital dark ages accelerated by corporate-controlled pre-mined money. So that's proof of work Bitcoin versus proof of stake, which is the 22,000 other coins. But what we're highlighting here is that true independence.
People want Bitcoin to move from proof of work to proof of stake, because the proof of stake system is the system that got everybody into trouble and why people are holding up banks to get their own money back in Lebanon. Proof of work solves all those problems. Proof of work is the solution for a proof of stake system, whether it's in the altcoin market or the fiat money world system or even the gold system, that failed to work, failed to offer sovereignty to individuals. A point that was understood by El Salvador that said, we're going to bestow individual sovereignty to our 7 million here in the country by making Bitcoin legal tender. And that's why El Salvador became the hope of the world. The city, the shining city on a hill is now El Salvador.
Exactly.
Okay, so we want to hold on to those ideas because it took many hundreds of years, if not 1,000 years, to figure out that those were the enlightened ideas we wanted. We wanted to separate church and state. And now with Bitcoin, we figured out how to separate money from state. It's an evolution of the enlightened philosophy. And the people who are challenged by this are fighting back, just like the church did, fight back against those who were creating the new philosophy and political system of enshrining freedom. So now we're at that same stage again, except the players, the technology in this case is not the printing press, it's Bitcoin. Right, well, as President Bukele said when he announced he's running for 2024, is that this is the first time, and this is also the week of independence here in El Salvador, that the country has experienced real freedom in 201 years. So this is part and parcel with the Bitcoin revolution, has met the Salvadoran revolution, and the result is a beacon that's attracting money, talent, goodwill, and as a result, the country is prospering.